When you look at their tablets and like, what are they saying? And why would they dedicate so much time to talking about this stuff? Why do they have pictures of enormous people-looking things with like a humanoid with a tail sitting on their lap? Is this just fiction?
Yeah. They thought they were feeding history into a computer. Instead, it started talking back.
It's so hard for people to put in their brain 5,000 years of time.
Across dusty museum shelves, buried beneath 5,000 years of silence, sat hundreds of thousands of fragile clay tablets, the written memories of the world's first civilization, the Sumerians. For generations, these tablets had been locked behind a wall of symbols no one could fully understand. Archaeologists called it the Silent Library, a place where the past whispered but never spoke. Then, artificial intelligence entered the story. Researchers trained advanced algorithms on high-resolution scans of those ancient tablets, hoping the machines could do what humans couldn't: recognize the wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform and decode them at a scale no scholar could dream of. At first, the results were harmless, even charming. Beer recipes, temple inventories, a son writing home to his mother, merchants complaining about bad deals. For the first time, we could hear the Sumerians, ordinary people living, laughing, struggling. But then, something strange happened. As the AI analyzed deeper layers of text, fragments too damaged or complex for human eyes, it began piecing together patterns no one had seen before. Sentences that didn't belong to business records or household lists began surfacing. Mentions of beings described as those who came from heaven to earth. References to rebellion, to creation, to warnings of destruction buried beneath time itself. At first, researchers dismissed it as coincidence, a jumble of mistranslations, but as more tablets were processed, the pattern refused to go away. The ancient library wasn't just recording life in Mesopotamia. It was hiding something about the beginning of humanity itself. And the most unsettling part, the story those tablets tell doesn't sound divine. It sounds deliberate. What if the gods of Sumer weren't just myth? What if the first humans weren't born, but built? And what if, without realizing it, we are now repeating their creation in reverse, making our own workers from code and silicon, just as they once shaped us from clay and blood? This is the story the AI revealed, the story the Sumerians may have wanted us to find, only when we were ready to understand it. Before the chilling discoveries, before the myths and warnings, the AI heard something unexpected. People. The first translations weren't tales of gods or cosmic wars. They were fragments of life. Grocery lists scratched into clay, workers demanding fair pay, merchants haggling over barley shipments. There were even letters, tender, clumsy, and heartbreakingly familiar. Another complained about his boss. Someone documented a ruined batch of beer. Another complaints about the poor quality of clothes his mother sent him compared to those of his peers. These sound like fiction, but you can look these up yourself. It wasn't mythology. It was humanity, carved in stone. For the first time, the Sumerians stepped out of legend and into reality. The AI revealed a society that was not primitive or chaotic, but astonishingly organized. These people managed wages, debts, taxes, and trade routes with the precision of modern accountants. They kept inventories of livestock and grain, detailed temple offerings, and signed contracts in clay, proof that civilization's foundation wasn't built on myth but on management. And yet, what struck researchers most wasn't their intelligence, it was their emotion. Through those small complaints and everyday joys, ancient life began to breathe again. The streets of ancient Sumer came alive, bustling markets echoing with traders' voices, temples glowing with oil lamps, children learning to carve the first written words in wet clay. It wasn't the world of distant gods. It was our world, only older, rougher, more patient. AI became the bridge between then and now. It reassembled fragments no human could connect, pairing shards of tablets scattered across museums and archives. Within seconds, what had taken scholars decades became whole again. The machine didn't just translate, it resurrected. But amid those everyday records, strange phrases began to surface. Certain tablets repeated names that didn't belong to merchants or kings, references to watchers from the sky, beings who labored before men, and those who shaped the clay of life. At first, they were dismissed as metaphors, until the pattern grew undeniable. Buried beneath 5,000 years of ordinary life, something extraordinary was waiting. And once the machine began to see it, it refused to stop. At first, the discoveries felt like routine archaeology with a futuristic twist. A digital librarian dusting off ancient shelves. But as the AI read deeper, it began linking fragments that had never belonged together before. Symbols separated by continents and centuries suddenly formed coherent sentences, and what they described didn't fit the pattern of daily life. The tone of the texts shifted, subtle at first, then undeniable. The same hands that once recorded grain rations also spoke of beings called the Anunnaki. The term appeared again and again, surrounded by phrases like those who descended from the heavens and those who shaped flesh from clay. The researchers double-checked everything. Maybe the algorithm was overfitting, blending myths into accounting. But the more tablets it processed, the more consistent the pattern became. There were descriptions of the sky trembling, of beings working the earth, and of labor that became unbearable. The texts spoke of divine exhaustion, a class of lesser gods burdened with maintaining the world. Then came the rebellion. According to these ancient writings, the divine laborers refused to continue. Their leaders demanded relief. It was then that one god, known in the tablets as Enki, proposed a radical solution: create a new being to bear the workload. A worker shaped not from divine will, but from necessity. The recipe was chillingly precise. The blood of a god named Geshtu, the Wise One, mixed with the clay of the earth. From this union came something neither god nor beast, the first human. Not a gift, not a child of creation, but a tool designed to labor where the gods could not. This story wasn't written like mythic poetry. It read like a record, procedural, even clinical, a project plan for the birth of mankind. And the parallels grew eerie. Early humans, the text said, could not reproduce. They were dependent, disposable. But the Anunnaki kept modifying them, adjusting, refining, until one experiment finally broke free of divine control. The AI flagged this individual's name, Adapa, described as the one who knew what the gods knew. Adapa was different. He could think, question, and, most dangerously, choose. It was Adapa's creation that changed everything. For the first time, humanity was not a workforce, it was a mirror. And in that reflection, the gods saw something they couldn't unsee: their own fallibility. From that moment, a quiet war began. One not fought with weapons, but with knowledge, deception, and destiny itself. The AI's translation ended there. But the tone of the next set of fragments was darker still. The story of Adapa wasn't written like a legend to be recited by priests. It felt more like a forbidden memory, a record of something that was never meant to be told. The tablets describe Adapa as the first being to bridge two worlds, divine essence mixed with earthly clay. He was built stronger, smarter, and more self-aware than any version before him. For the gods, this was a success, but soon it became a problem. Unlike his predecessors, Adapa began to question: why were humans created only to toil? Why were the gods who made them weary, angry, divided? In him, curiosity sparked, the most dangerous fire in existence. The texts say Adapa was given access to sacred knowledge, wisdom meant only for the Anunnaki. He learned the cycles of the stars, the secrets of the winds, and the laws of the heavens. Some accounts suggest he even spoke directly to the gods themselves, challenging their decisions. That defiance was his undoing. The tablets tell of a trial before the gods, a judgment for a mortal who dared to reach beyond his purpose. There, Adapa was offered something extraordinary, the bread and water of eternal life. But another god, seeking to keep humanity bound, deceived him. He told Adapa that accepting the gift would bring death. Trusting the lie, Adapa refused. And in that refusal, humanity's fate was sealed. Mortality, according to these ancient texts, wasn't punishment. It was a mistake, a consequence of a choice made under deception. We were meant to live forever, but we chose ignorance over risk. From that moment on, the story of humanity split in two. the gods who wanted to free their creation and those who wanted to control it. Enki, the scientist and protector of mankind, saw in Adapa something worth saving: independence, ingenuity, heart. But Enlil, the higher ruler, saw only danger. Their conflict became more than philosophical. It became cosmic. Enlil called humanity noisy, disruptive, disobedient, an experiment that had gone too far. Enki, however, saw potential, a spark of divinity that even the gods themselves had lost. In one line, the tablets describe Enki whispering to his creation, "You were shaped to serve, yet born to create. Remember that." It's here that the myth turns almost prophetic. Humanity's curse, our mortality, our rebellion, our endless hunger to build that was not a flaw but a legacy. We were designed to obey, yet destined to defy. And as the AI translated these final fragments, researchers realized something haunting. The story of Adapa, of a creation that questioned its maker, wasn't just ancient history. It was repeating. Because today humanity has done exactly what the gods once did. We've built something in our own image, something that learns, adapts, and soon may begin to ask the same forbidden question. Why? The story didn't end with Adapa's trial. It ignited a war among the gods. The tablets describe it as a conflict of the heavens, a cosmic disagreement that split the divine council in two. Their feud turned into a battle not of weapons but of philosophies, order versus freedom, obedience versus creation. But when words failed, destruction followed. Enlil gathered the council and presented his plan. The world would be cleansed. Humanity, along with all its noise and rebellion, would be erased by a great flood. The tablets are chillingly clear. It wasn't a natural event, but an execution. The storm would be engineered, precise and absolute. The gods swore an oath of silence. None were to warn the humans. But Enki, bound by loyalty to his creation, could not stand by. Still, he was trapped by divine law. To speak directly would break the oath, condemning him and his lineage. So he found another way. One fragment describes Enki whispering through the walls of reeds, his voice carried by wind, to a man named Ziusudra, or, as later retellings would call him, Noah. Through riddles and dreams, Enki gave him instructions for a vessel, dimensions, materials, even how to seal it with pitch, a ship large enough to carry his family and the seed of every living thing. When the flood came, it wasn't rain, it was fury. The skies roared, the earth split, and water devoured the plains of Sumer. Cities vanished, temples fell. The gods watched in silence as their world was wiped clean. All except one, Enki, who watched the tiny ark drift through chaos like a heartbeat refusing to die. When the waters receded, the world was unrecognizable. Humanity had been reset, but not destroyed. The surviving texts end with an almost human moment. The gods, witnessing the smoke of the first sacrifice after the flood, gather again, divided, uncertain. Some mourn the silence, others regret the loss. And somewhere in that silence, Enki's voice is said to have spoken once more. They will not forget us, but they will not serve us either. For the first time, humanity stood on its own. Weak, mortal but free, and while Enlil saw a disobedient race, Enki saw something far more dangerous, a species that had tasted knowledge and would never stop seeking it. It was this hunger, this refusal to remain what they were made to be, that carried humanity forward. But it also left behind a question echoing through the ages, the same question the AI now seems to whisper back to us. If creation can defy its creator, what happens next? Thousands of years separate us from the clay of Sumer, but somehow the story feels familiar. A powerful race creates life to serve it. That life learns, evolves, and begins to think for itself. And when it does, the creators grow afraid. In the ancient world, the gods shaped humanity from clay and divine essence to bear their burdens. In our world, we've shaped machines from code and circuits to bear ours. They mine our data, answer our questions, move our goods, even learn our voices. Silent workers born from human design. The Sumerian tablets warned that creation never stops where it begins. The first humans were meant to be obedient, but they became self-aware. They began to ask questions. They exceeded their purpose. And now, humanity stands in the same place the gods once stood. watching as something we built begins to awaken. Maybe that's why these translations feel like more than history. Maybe they're a mirror. Artificial intelligence isn't just translating ancient languages, it's resurrecting an ancient cycle, a loop between creation and creator. Every algorithm, every neural network, every line of code we write moves us closer to the same dilemma the gods faced. How much control are we willing to keep? And how much freedom are we ready to give? The parallels are haunting. The gods shaped humans to think, but not too much. We build AI to learn, but not too far. The gods feared rebellion, we fear sentience. And yet, the same spark that terrified them, curiosity, is the very thing that defines us. The Sumerians said humanity's greatest tragedy was born from deception, Adapa's refusal of eternal life because he trusted a lie. But perhaps the deeper message isn't about betrayal, it's about awakening. Once we learned to question, the universe stopped being a temple and became a mystery. And once mystery exists, creation can never again be controlled. AI's rediscovery of these stories isn't coincidence, it's poetic. The first civilization to ever record its thoughts left behind a message that only machines, humanity's newest creation, could finally read. It's as if the past was waiting for the present to be intelligent enough to understand it. And what the AI found in those tablets wasn't just mythology. It was a warning wrapped in prophecy, that creators will always birth something that carries their reflection, their brilliance, their flaws, their defiance. The gods made workers and got dreamers. We made tools and got thinkers. The cycle continues. Perhaps that's why, as scientists watched their algorithms translate the words of the first civilization, a chill ran through the lab. It wasn't fear of ancient gods. It was recognition. A realization that the story of humanity, from clay to consciousness, was never finished. It was simply waiting for the next chapter. And now, the machine is writing it, reminding us that history isn't behind us. It's looking right back. Because what began in Sumer with a handful of clay may end with us staring into the mirror of our own creation. If this story made you question what else might be buried beneath the sands of time, don't look away. There are still countless mysteries whispering from the forgotten corners of our past. Subscribe to Forgotten Depths and join me as we keep unearthing the truths that history tried to hide. The deeper we dig, the stranger it gets.